What's up, guys? It's another day in the shop and we got another project for you. Let's get after it. Alright guys, tonight, here's what we got for you. Honk honk! Got a big old Pete here in the shop. So, the way this story goes, out of nowhere, I get a phone call. And it's from a guy, I don't know, never met him before. He reaches out to me and he tells me he wants a hitch welded on his semi so that he can pull a car. I said, yeah, that's something I can do. As the story evolves, customer just purchased this truck off of an auction, so they are currently driving to Utah right now to pick this truck up. So they're going to drive their personal vehicle here. When they get here, they're hoping that I have the hitch installed and it's all done so that they can hook their car up to it and head out and drive home. Obviously, I'm assuming that this guy is some sort of a truck driver and he just purchased this truck for his fleet or so that he can do cross-country trucking, I'm assuming. So, that's the story. It's going to be pretty straightforward. So, we've got this surface here to work with on both sides. We do have a little bit of wiring we'll have to get out of the way, but that shouldn't be an issue. We got to make sure that we maintain clearance on these airbags, and we'll just build basically a mini receiver. It's going to have some gussets on it. It'll be built out of 2.5-inch square tube, and that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and get some measurements, and then we'll go ahead and get a drawing going of what we're thinking. So let's go ahead and get after it. Alright guys, next step. So you can see we drew up our drawing here. We got some measurements. This is kind of what our outside gussets are going to look like, and then we'll have some 4-inch triangle gussets on the actual receiver. So I've got my gussets drafted up here. We're just getting ready to pull the trigger. So, fire in the hole. Love that thing. Dag nabbit, son, that thing does a good job. Alright, so we're going to grab those, get them over to the table, we'll start cleaning them up, and then we're going to cut some tube. We'll go ahead and get all our parts cut, get them over to the table, start cleaning them up, and start fitting up this receiver. Let's do it. Alright, we got our parts here. We got some cleanup work to do. This is the collar that goes around the end of the receiver tube. The purpose of that is to beef it up, give it more rigidity right there at the end. We've got to clean that up, and then we've also got to knock that seam off on the inside of this so we can smack it over the top of this tube. We also need to drill our 5/8 hole for the pin, and then we're going to clean these up. There's hardly any dross on these, but we're gonna get them all cleaned up so they look nice. And then I'm gonna hit all the sharp edges and corners. So we'll clean all this up and then we'll be ready to start fitting it up. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, I want to show you guys something real quick. We got our collar cleaned up. It drops on to the outside of this, and then we weld that front and back. I usually trigger this face and then buff it clean. It looks nice. And then I weld it 100% on the back. So then we'll drill our 5/8 hole, but this is not DOM. This is just regular square tube, and it has a seam. Hopefully you guys can see the seam in there from manufacturing the tube. So because it has a seam, so for those of you who don't know, DOM is drawn over mandrel. That's what it stands for. The process that they use to manufacture the tube is different, so it doesn't have a seam. This has a seam, and so because we need to slide our hitch in here, that seam is in the way. So I didn't have any DOM, so I've just got to use what I've got because the customer is probably going to be here tomorrow or the day after. So we're going to try to get this seam knocked out, and then we'll go from there. Alright, I want to try to get this fit up tonight. I've got it shimmed up off the table 1/2 inch, so there's going to be 1/2 inch overhang on the back and bottom of these gussets. So they'll sit like this. We'll get those tacked up, and then we'll go ahead and get our receiver tube and our gussets tacked on as well. So that's kind of the plan. So I am welding this up with dual shield. Like I've said before, pretty much anything structural I weld with either dual shield or stick. Alright guys, we're back at it tonight. We are going to start tonight by getting our receiver tube finished up. So the things we've got left to do are to drill the hole for the pin, and then we've also got to grind the inside down, that seam. We got to get that cleaned out to the point where our hitch will slide into it. So I always like to check it before I weld it up. It's just easier to manage, easier to work with before you get it welded to the hitch. We'll go ahead and start by drilling the hole in this. So it's 2.5 inches off the end of the tube to the center of the hole. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and center pop that, and then we'll get it over in the drill press. Okay, so we're going to get our receiver tube in here. So I'm using a number 5 center drill. I always like to use a center drill first, especially with stuff like this where you got to make sure that it's lined up and centered. We're nice and centered now. Go ahead and center drill this. Okay, so the purpose of the center drill, in case I haven't mentioned it before or in case you haven't seen the other episodes, which you'll definitely want to do, the purpose of it is to center the drill bit. It's way harder to center that than it is to center that. So you get it all centered on your center pop and you don't move the machine, then you put your large drill bit in, and the other purpose it serves is it starts the hole so that the drill bit doesn't walk. So it's got a couple purposes which both are invaluable. I'm just going to go ahead and drop the table just a little bit so I can get the bit in. Okay, so this bit is a 41/64. Now that is 1/64 over 5/8. I like to go a 64th over so that you don't have to fight the pin getting it in. Here we go. So we'll clean that up, hole's nice and centered, and then I always check it with the hitch too to make sure everything lines up. But that looks nice and centered. So we'll clean that up, and now we've just got to get this seam situation figured out. So we're going to keep working on that until we can slide the hitch in. So we'll do that now, and then once we get it all cleaned up and ready to weld on the hitch, we'll give you guys a look. Alright guys, so we got the seam all buffed out of there, slid the hitch in and out, slides in and out okay. So now we're going to go ahead and start tacking this and the gussets. So we're going to make sure we're centered, which we're not even close. That's why you check. Now I need to lay out center so that we can fit our gussets in here. So this is ready to weld out. Alright guys, we got this all welded out. I did slide the hitch in and check the pin. It lined right up, so that's good. That's the design I use. It works good, it's solid, and it looks professional in my opinion. So now that this is done, we're going to go over to the truck. I've already got it prepped. We're going to put it up under the truck, and I've got to move the welder and stuff, but we'll get it over there and we'll get it tacked up. Okay, so as you can see, we're using the crane to hold this up.
It's time for today's super cool tool.
Alright guys, so for today's super cool tool, we're going to be talking about the crane. I know that in previous videos I've talked about the jib cranes, and I have mentioned some of the specifics about the crane, but I don't believe I've talked about the actual hoist. Today's super cool tool is going to be more just specifically about the hoist. This is something that makes my life a lot easier on a daily basis. Having a crane, having a hoist, having something where I can lift large amounts of weight, that's a big deal for somebody who's running a fab business and for somebody who's consistently working on heavy things. So the pendant on this hoist, we've got up, down, out, and in. The hoists that I prefer are Coughing brand, and as you can see, this motor here is the one that drives it up and down the beam, and then there is another motor inside the hoist here that raises the chain up and down. So that's why you have up, down, out, and in on your pendant. This hoist here is 110 volt. What I've done is I've put an outlet in that top corner, and that's where it plugs in. I've done the same thing on both jibs where there's a ring zip tied to the cord, and then it coils itself up as it drives in and out. This hoist is a 2-ton, but to be honest, the jib crane is only rated for 1. So I don't lift anything over 2,000 pounds. I always make sure what the weight is of what I'm lifting, which is always a good practice. The hook on this hoist, you can see it is rated for 2-ton. There is just a pulley in here. If you understand the way pulleys and hoists and chains work, I believe that's why this hoist is able to lift 2-ton, is because of the pulley where the chain is doubled over. If you look at this hoist is a 3-phase hoist, and I have done the same thing. I put an outlet in right there. That's where it plugs in. The setup is the same, but there is only a single chain on this hoist, and I do like this hoist a little better as far as lifting speed is a lot faster. It is 1 ton, and I do like that because for safety reasons, then if I try to lift something more than a ton, the hoist just flat won't do it. So that's basically the functions of the hoists themselves. The main reason that I prefer the driving hoists is they're safer. There's been a lot of times over the course of my career fabricating and welding where I've had to roll really heavy things like tanks or really large awkward pieces of equipment. And when you have to roll those, if you have the type that just hooks onto a beam trolley, when the piece of equipment finally rolls over, they can take off down the beam and you basically just have to get the heck out of the way because you're not stopping it. These ones are nice because there's resistance, and even if something starts to slip, the fact that the drive rollers on the trolley are stationary, when you go to roll a piece of equipment, it will end up dragging down the beam to the point where it doesn't just take off and go. So that's why I prefer this type. They are a lot more expensive. Both hoists I purchased secondhand. Although I did put quite a bit of work into them, I got them for a very affordable price. I want to say that I bought the 1 ton for, it was like 150 bucks. And I bought the 2 ton for probably 300 bucks, I think. Both hoists, when I got them, they didn't have the pendant cable. They didn't have the pendant. I purchased that stuff off Amazon, and then I was able to pull the covers off and figure out how to wire it up. The manuals for these hoists online are very readily available, so it made it a lot easier for me to be able to figure out how to wire those in. Once I got the pendant in and the power hooked up, I did have a crane company come out and inspect the hoists once I got them on the jib cranes just to make sure they were safe. They went through them and checked everything out. I want to say it was like 300 bucks to have them do that. I didn't think that was too bad, and now I know that they function properly and they're safe. If you're thinking about putting a hoist in your shop, whether it be on a jib or whether you're going to build a gantry or whatever it may be, this type of hoist, they are adjustable. There's spacers where you can adjust them in and out. So depending on what size of beam you're running it on, you can adjust a little bit for that. So if you are looking at getting some sort of a hoist or building yourself a gantry or a jib crane or whatever, check them out. Coughing is a really good brand. Columbus McKinnon is a really good brand. Those are the main two that I prefer. That's the hoist. It's a game changer in fabrication. It's a game changer in this shop. Check them out. That's going to wrap up our super cool tool for the day. Let's get back to the project.
Now I'm going to grab the hammer, I'm going to grab my tape measure, and I'm going to pull off the inside here and make sure it's centered. And then I'm going to make sure it's centered off of this back piece angle as well. That'll make sure that we're centered this way and this way. It's always good to have a welding hood when you want to weld. Well, bam! I think that turned out pretty dang good. They got plenty of room to get to their pin here. So we're gonna weld it here and then around this whole thing, and then we'll give you guys a look. So we're gonna go into warp mode, we'll weld this out, and then we'll come back to you. And I'm gonna really try not to burn my sphincter this time. All right, fire in the hole. Okay guys, last look before we paint it. So it's welded out 100%. Gonna grab a black rattle can, we'll shoot it with some paint, and we'll give you one final look. Alright, so turns out I'm out of spray paint because someone's been using it. So I guess tomorrow I'll go to the hardware store, grab some paint. I'll bring you guys back, give you one last look. See you tomorrow. Alright guys, so we got this all spray painted. I didn't think I needed to put you guys through the misery of just watching me paint. I'd really like to hook the four-wheeler trailer up to this and drag it around the block just for fun, but it's not mine, so I guess I won't. But that's gonna wrap this one up. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it was entertaining. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. So they're gonna drive their personal vehicle to do this is All right, I want to try to get this fit up tonight, so I'm going to hurry and try and fit this up. I'm out of spray paint because someone's been using it. So I guess tomorrow I'll go to the hardware store, get
for somebody who is, they are a fairly piece, goodness. All right, so that's gonna wrap up our super cool fool. I am a super cool fool. All right, so that's gonna wrap up our super cool tool for this project. All right, so that's gonna wrap up our super cool tool project. Super cool tool project?